Hi, host Eric here, host Talking with Famous People, and I've got a topic which is communication styles and ways of parsing ideas and ways of dealing with ideas in general from a adversarial rhetoric standpoint, namely through debate. As a debate coach, I see different kind of students come in and have very different approaches to the event, to the sport. And it's a sport where students take the coach provides various strategies. The students sort of massage those strategies according to what they feel more comfortable doing or less comfortable doing, and a variety of other things. Some students want to simplify, some students want to personalize, etc. And then they make these sets of arguments in debate rounds, arguing both sides. First one case, the aft side, then maybe the other case. They have to be prepared to do both. And I see the way the different types interact with ideas differently. So what I tend to find is the most natural debaters, but not necessarily the best, INTJs can do an excellent job of being some of the best debaters in the country when they have a lot of practice. Same with ENTJs. But in their natural, unshaped state, the natural debaters are ENTPs and INTPs. And the reason is because of the quality that Krat just displayed there about the dogs. It's because our natural inclination is to parse out ideas at the meta level, which says, whenever we face a problem at any given level, we go up a level and say, okay, but you're wrong at that level then. Which is why we tend to be so disruptive, ENTPs especially, regarding other people's ideas and want to always point out what's wrong with them. Which is annoying, right? It's a super annoying habit to have if you're the person who's always getting shit pointed out that's wrong to you. It's one that I've tried to suppress in certain contexts anyway. But then we see other types who approach the ideas and the process very differently. Watching Courtney, my ENTJ LD debater last year, it was my third year with her in LD. Her first year she was pretty weak, but what she did, and it was obvious what she did, was she built a set of a knowledge base, first of all, and then a skills base, and combined them over time until she got really, really good. Was, in my opinion, one of the best debaters in the country for sure at her age, at 8th grade, but got screwed at nationals badly by some fucking horrible judge decisions and stuff like that. But regardless, she approached it very differently. She did not naturally come at it from I want my own hands on the ideas here. She was very much about, I want to know what the coach says the ideas are that I'm supposed to be running. I want him to go over all the arguments and responses with me. In contrast, probably my best young debater is a 7th grader this year. His name's Edmund. He's an INTP, and he is already, he was by the end of last year already at the stage where he's evaluating the effectiveness of my arguments in terms of their round, the way they play in rounds with actual judges, and making changes to my case strategy according to make them more appealing to certain kind of judges and stuff like that. That's the sort of approach to debate that the INTP ENTP has. They want to get their own hands in it much more, and they want to come up with the ideas that they're arguing more, whereas ENTJ, INTJ are much happier learning the ideas, learning the processes, learning the protocols, and executing the same strategies and same vectors of argumentation over and over again until they get them razor sharp and perfect, which can probably be maybe the best way to ultimately be successful. But the whole point of this is that they don't engage with ideas in an intuitively generative way. They learn that process. And we don't engage NTPs with ideas in an intuitively Pokeball way, where we want to go out and catch them and bring them to us. Instead, we approach them in this sort of adversarial capacity. And so both sides have to learn the opposite side to develop their relationship with ideas and their relationship with language. a fairly long preface, but let's open the floor and see what anybody else has any thoughts on this notion.
Why are ENTJs and INTJs the best debaters?
I don't think they are. I don't think they are.
No, yeah, they're more prone to be. Why?
I think they can be. They have the capacity to be. I think in general, NTPs are better in general.
But what's the reasoning behind it? I'm still trying to figure out.
Well, because, I mean, first of all, they typically are more disciplined, and they get more and more efficient at what they're doing as time passes. And they don't expand what they're doing necessarily to try a bunch of new shit. Now, you might think that's going to hamstring them, but that's what they got a coach for, right? And once they find certain techniques that their coach provides them that work, they're going to use those over and over again, and then build this sort of web of specific techniques and specific approaches. They like having a set case that they can learn. That's why I like doing policy debates. They have the same case and they refine it over the course of a year. NTPs are much more likely to try out new shit all the time. And we get restless with making the same kind of arguments. We want to try to make new arguments. We like to play more. It can kind of hamstring us if we play too much. We're not disciplined enough.
What's the coach? What does the coach do?
Well, the coach generally comes up with the various argumentation schemata that might be run by the team. For example, the current topic in public forum is about whether or not we should provide more search protections against search for students in schools who currently have very limited protections against search. So, I mean, one of my argument change is to negate the resolution by saying, no, we shouldn't use the probable cause standard because we should use a more vigorous standard. And probable cause, if we use the probable cause standard, that's going to provide a sort of security theater-esque perception that we've done something when actually we've not increased real meaningful protections at all, thereby making it counterproductive. That's one line of case that we might run on neg, which actually is a way of basically affirming the idea of the resolution, but just saying it doesn't go far enough, right? Because I don't like the idea of trying to argue against additional protections entirely. I'd rather argue for some third possibility than the two the resolution provides. So it's like those are the sort of case strategies I might come up with. And for AF, I'm probably going to argue that it's very little change, but it's meaningful in the sense that it makes case law more consistent with the Constitution. That's a good thing, or something like that. I mean, I don't know. It's a new topic, and I'm still thinking it out. But I'll have probably 3 or 4 different cases. Probably 2 or 3 on each side. You know, probably 2 on each side, maybe a third on one of the sides by the time I'm done. And then those are base cases the kids can work off. They use them in scrimmages, and then they go like, well, this is weak. I keep getting beat here. I'm like, well, we need an extension for it. And then they either find it or they don't. And, you know, I might find it or whatever. I don't know. It plays out like that.
Being a debater is a profession in America?
Being a debater is not a profession. Being a debate coach is a profession.
Oh, okay.
Which is my profession. And it's a sport, right? Like, when you enter a tournament, there's one debate. In each format, one debater or team wins first place. One gets runner-up. One gets third place, fourth place. You get ranked out all the way through the whole field. So it's a very meaningful and accurate and win-loss kind of a metric, right? So if you're a good coach and you win a lot, then you can usually attract plenty of clients at a pretty reasonable rate. But if you aren't, then there's no reason for people to go with you.
How do they make a decision who actually wins them? What's the criteria? Because I can see if, I mean, this isn't going to be accurate, but if you have TJs as the people marking it, and they didn't have a criteria, then I imagine NTJs would probably get it, being slightly more objective.
Well, the criteria is the flow. Okay, so I mean, ideally we have former debaters or coaches and stuff like that engaging in the judging process. The way it happens is you get 2 teams that go into a room. There's a judge sitting in the back of the room. If it's an important round, there might be a 3 or even 5 judge panel, and everybody's supposed to flow the round, which means my case is going to be structured like, here's my framework, here are my definitions. I also have this criterion. Whoever does this best should win this round. And now here are my contention level arguments. Contention 1, contention 2, contention 3. These are the impacts, these are the warrants. And then the opposing team, if it's public forum, they present their own neg case. It's not a response to your case. Then each team responds in turn to the other person's case. Now at that point, you've got stuff on the flow, right? You've got contention 1, contention 2, contention 3 on the flow. When the other team responds to it, if that response is in fact responsive, even if it's not, if they say some words that they say this is responding to their contention 1, then those words get written down on the flow. And as a general rule, should be presumed to have knocked over the first contention until that first contention is rebuilt or that response is responded to. So you have two flows going on, one for aff, one for neg. And the round goes back and forth like that until the end of the round where you see what's left standing on the flow and you see the framework arguments. As a judge, when I judge, I go, okay, first of all, who won framework? If it's a wash on framework, or if one team clearly won framework, they go, okay, well, I know I'm adjudicating the round under their framework now. Now let me look at the impacts as they play out under that framework according to what's standing, what's not standing, according to what the debaters said. I never judge on anything that's not said in the round. So it doesn't matter what my beliefs or opinions are or anything like that. It's a scoreable game like chess or something like that where there are things established on the flow that are either countered, they're turned, they're whatever. There's various functions you can play, so to speak. Yeah. But yeah, that's how it's supposed to be judged. Is it always judged that way? No. Judging is kind of fucked up in debate a lot of times because you get some parent judges in there and other stupid, annoying shit like that.
Debating sounds fun, holy shit.
It sounds what?
Fun.
It's
like,
super fun.
Yeah, if I was like actual debating as a sport, if I was in America, I would actually do that. Like going to class and stuff.
Yeah, it's super fun. Because it's real. It's like in class, 5 people got an A. Can't happen in debate. You can't just be good, you gotta be better than everybody else. That's what makes it good. Zero sum, I like zero sum shit. It's real.
My desire for harmony really makes me not like debating. It seems too divisive. I want to pull people together and get everyone yelling at each other.
Well, the funny thing is, amongst debaters, debating is very much a harmonizing and inclusive and bring you together activity because there are so many NTPs in it. First of all, almost all the best people are NTPs. So, if you imagine a policy round that's got 2 ENTPs and 2 INTPs in it, they're going to come out of that not at all upset about anything that was said in the round. And if it was a good round where they threw down hardcore and it was close, they're both going to come out, all the debaters are going to come out of that round going like, hey, that was a hell of a good round, you guys. That was fucking fun. And may the better team win. If it's a blowout, then there's a different kind of politeness that occurs, But amongst NTPs, there's no conflict. It's not considered conflict. It's all considered fun,
Yeah, that's true. I would actually, if in Portugal that existed, I would actually prefer that over video games. Definitely, dude. It sounds like a paradise to me.
One of my projects, and you could see if anyone were actually interested, you can go to talkingwithfamouspeople.com/reading. Somewhere in there is a folder or document saying Milk Lab. That's my in-progress plan to have debate function like Magic the Gathering kind of, or another game like that where you have cards that interact with each other according to a system that defines the various vectors of argumentation and allows you to turn debate into like a trading card game without meaningfully losing the flexibility of actual debate. That's my goal.
Like that, I'm interested.
I'm in the process of doing it. Yeah, you can check out the documents I currently have done on it. It's one of those ENTP made good progress on this project and then reached a snag and then just stopped working on it entirely. So, Just kind of how shit rolls with old NE in charge. You kind of have trouble sticking with things sometimes.
Sounds like an interesting concept, though.
Yeah, I plan to come back to it for sure. I want to make sure that I do it, and part of it is because it's supposed to coordinate with a debate card database service that I want to provide that is going to ideally, in my vision, replace the other existing debate card services that are all inferior to my integrated database / case testing game system that I have in mind. So that's my plan there.
Do you guys use formal fallacies a lot on the debate? Like, for example, there's an argument or a case or whatever you call it here, and then when you're like counter-argumenting, you say like that was a head-Hammond fallacy or something. Like, do you use that structure like of the
right? Well, that would be called an analytic. So anytime you use arguments that don't require citation, they're called analytics. And
Okay.
I tell, it's like if you're doing a really great rebuttal, what you'll do in public forum anyway, let's say they have a fairly reasonable sized case. It's got 3 contentions in it, maybe 1 subpoint. And you have a little bit of time to do it. Well, you'll go like, so let's say you made the argument that it best upholds democratic values to let's say to keep all drugs except marijuana criminalized because that's what the majority wants. Okay, let's say you made that argument that yes, we should keep all other drugs besides marijuana criminalized because that's what the majority of Americans want. That's best upholds democratic principles, and that's the criterion we should use to judge this round. So that's why you should vote for me. Okay, a good rebuttal speech would go, okay, number 1, here's an analytic that's fallacious. It's an appeal to popular sentiment fallacy. Number 2, their definition of democratic values is flawed. They seem to think the democratic values simply means the majority will gets done. But instead, our democratic values are actually maintained primarily through a limiting principle that prevents government from engaging in overreach called the Constitution. It is in fact in adherence to this document and to the limiting principles thereof that define whether or not a government is legitimate and whether or not it upholds the democratic values. The democratic values are fundamentally rule of law, and if we don't obey the core rule of law of the country, namely the Constitution, then we fail to uphold democratic values. What my opponent here is advocating for is unconstitutional and therefore fails to uphold democratic values. And in my third response, I have this card right here that says, it's by Smith 2012, and it says, in significant regions of the country, majorities prefer decriminalization when the question is phrased like this. And so then I'll sort of directly counter the evidence, or at least partially counter it, or at least mitigate its impact by reading this piece of evidence here that says he's sort of right, but he's sort of wrong about his basic position. So now I've countered it in 3 ways. I've said, number 1, logically it's wrong. Number 2, definitionally, the criteria you're comparing against is different than what you say it is. And number 3, factually, it's only partially right. So, Judge, we really should give this particular argument in the round very little weight.
Yeah, I understand. I completely understand that. Is there a situation where someone doesn't actually make a fallacy, where there's no pre-analysis? There's nothing you can actually say is wrong with it?
Well, let's say that somebody's making a simple factual assertion that if we persist in the current use of drones in the Middle East, we will continue to kill innocent people, which constitutes murder. Murder is illegal, and the U.S. government should not engage in murderous behavior. Therefore, we should stop all drone behavior right now. Let's say somebody made that argument. There's nothing fallacious about it. It's reasonable to conclude, at least, that if we continue in the existing drone behavior, that the existing pattern of drone killings that include at least some innocent people amongst those who we deem not innocent, like guilty enough to be killed on the spot for no reason, except that they're whatever, I guess enemies. If we acknowledge that is true, well, yeah, we should acknowledge that's true, right? So, okay, I'm acknowledging that's true. And then I acknowledge that, in fact, it does mean that the U.S. is murdering those people in some sense. But I'm not going to really acknowledge that point. I'm going to come deal with that in a second. And then, in the last one, I would say, its point about the U.S. should never engage in anything that's illegal is kind of the warrant of it. So if I were to attack that point and I wanted to say, no, we should continue to bomb them, I would say, number one, it is legal. They're not they're enemy combatants, and they're not, or I'd say they're terrorists. They have neither the rights of enemy combatants nor the rights of non-combatants. They instead occupy this third ground as established by this particular international law after 9/11. So legally, you're wrong. And your warrant here, the core of your warrant, is that we should do what is legal or illegal. And I've just proved to you that legally you're wrong. Your whole warrant here is based on the fact that it's illegal. That's why the United States shouldn't do it, and that's what makes it murder. But in fact, if it is legal, then it's not murder. It's an unfortunate casualty of war, and casualties of war that are unintended, but and unforeseeable, really, but necessarily going to happen sometimes. Those don't constitute murder. Those constitute tragedies. And just because we have some tragedies occur as part of our foreign policy is not reason in and of itself not to engage in that foreign policy. In fact, our continued bombing in the Middle East may produce, we're arguing in our case that it's going to subdue ISIS and save hundreds of thousands of lives and moderate Islam and save the world in the process, and whatever else I'm arguing, So in that instance, I'm not accusing them of anything fallacious. I'm just saying you're wrong, I'm saying you're wrong for those reasons I just said.
You're factually wrong. Right?
Well, no, not exactly factually wrong. I'm saying you're evaluating things according... Okay, yeah, you're factually wrong about the legality, right? You're factually wrong about the legality. And then because of that, the reasoning that plays out, it produces the opposite conclusion that you produced. Or even if I wanted to concede they were factually right, I could say, but you're evaluating under the wrong framework. We shouldn't be evaluating it based on its legality. We should be evaluating it based on its effectiveness. And I've won the point that it's going to be more effective and actually produce the more net good. So why shouldn't we have more saved lives and more whatever, even if it is illegal? It doesn't matter. The United States government has done countless illegal things throughout its history. It has, and yet here we are in a pretty free and fair society as the status quo. So obviously illegality doesn't cause nearly the harms my opponent is trying to say it does.
I see. I think I did actually debate a little bit, but I completely understand how you go about doing it. Sounds very interesting, but not entirely practical by the sounds of it.
Well, I mean, it's practical in the following way. Either you get ENTPs or INTPs who hone their natural ability into something that is razor sharp and potentially very useful in any context, or you get students who are not naturally inclined to be precise in their TI, and you train them to be precise in their TI regardless of what type they are, with a couple of exceptions. There are a couple types that you just say, I'm sorry, you're not cut out for debate.
Mm-hmm. It's the practice of doing it that actually, it's not the content, it's the methodology.
Right. It doesn't matter what side you're like. I don't believe we should keep bombing them. I don't think we should keep bombing the Middle East, but I certainly would be willing to argue it. And if I think it's the strongest tactical argument. But I tend to argue rights-based arguments because I want us to win that framework. If we win that framework and we win the rights argument, it's a binary decision for the judge, yes or no. You win or lose based on whether you win the framework, and if you do, it's easy to win the rights argument, and then boom, you got the round. But I also want to be able to fall back on some utilitarian shit, like some impacts. So it's complicated, it's fun, and I love talking about it. If you want to get me really displaying the ENTP like won't shut up thing, ask me about debate, and I can just yammer about it forever.
What's the difference between ENTPs and INTPs in like debating? Like, what's the major differences in them?
Does one talk more than another?
When they're advanced, not much. Let me let me do this. I'm gonna get you guys a link here. Let's end this video. I'm gonna send you guys a link to show you INTP
Yeah.
ENTP.
That's a good idea.